Hello, dear students. So, we are meeting again, and before we start our class, let us just pause and say a short prayer in memory of one of our teachers, Tahir Ali Sir. He was from the Department of Commerce. He passed away last Monday because he had met with some injury and finally he succumbed to it. So, in the memory of Sir and for the eternal peace of his soul, just let us start our class with a short prayer. Om Shanti. Coming back, last class, if you remember, we had done about, and in fact, we had started with the ordinal utility approach. And if you remember, before this, we had done the cardinal utility approach, wherein it was stated that satisfaction can be measured with the help of utils, and we can specifically assign a numerical value to the amount of satisfaction that we get from each commodity consumed. Now, the modern economists totally disregard this cardinal utility approach. Now, we have economists like J.R. Hicks and R.G.D. Allen. In fact, it is about after Hicks that this ordinal utility approach is also known as the Hicksian analysis, or we also call it as the indifference curve approach. And coming back, J.R. Hicks and R.G.D. Allen, they were popularly known as Hicks and Allen, and in 1934, they had written an article, and the name of the article, I quote, is A Reconstruction of the Theory of Value, unquote, and in it, they had presented the indifference curve analysis. And like I said, they were of the opinion that the cardinal measurement of utility is not a very realistic approach. They pointed out that utility is a psychological phenomenon and it is next to impossible to measure the utility in absolute terms. And they pointed out that a consumer can rank various combinations of goods and services in order of his preference, but he cannot definitely say how much of satisfaction he has got from the different units of commodity consumed. He might say he likes one combination more and one combination less. So what he can do is that he can rank his preference. Okay, so this is basically the ordinal utility approach to consumers' equilibrium, that is looking at consumers' satisfaction in terms of ranking or preferences. And in ordinal utility approach, the instrument that we use to derive at consumers' equilibrium is known as indifference curve. And indifference curve, there is a definition which I have given here. Let me just read out the definition. Here it's written that it is a graphical representation of the various alternative combinations of bundles of two goods amongst which the consumer is indifferent. Now let's place it very simply. What does this mean? It simply means that the consumer with his given income has access to different combinations of two goods, and these different combinations give him equal satisfaction. So basically he couldn't be bothered whether he has a combination say P as is given here, or Q or R or S or T, because ultimately in all of these combinations there are different quantities of two goods. Say in this example it is of apples and bananas. Quantities are different, but all of these different combinations gives him equal satisfaction, and that is why we say that the consumer is indifferent, because the satisfaction that he is getting from each combination is the same. So if you look into the indifference curve schedule which is given there before you, we have these combination P, Q, R, S, T. Each combination has different quantities of A, that is apples in this case, and B, bananas, but the satisfaction that he gets from each combination is same. So like this schedule, we have just converted it into a graph. Let us see. And in this graph, we have drawn the indifference curve. Let us see how it is plotted. So you can see here, we have plotted P, that is 1A plus 15B, Q, 2A plus 10B, and so on. And we get the points P, Q, R, S, T. These different combination gives him equal satisfaction. So when we join all these points, what we get is a indifference curve. Okay, so a indifference curve basically shows the various points of combination of two goods giving same satisfaction to the consumer. Now this concept of indifference curve, it is associated with certain axioms of preferences. Let us just see what these axioms mean. It simply means that it has certain characteristics, okay? The first axiom is axiom of completeness. It means that any two bundles can be compared. In short, it means that suppose we have a combination A and combination B, the consumer can always specify that he prefers A to B, or maybe B to A, or maybe combination A is indifferent to B. So in this way, these combination of goods that is available to the consumer are comparable. Next axiom is axiom of transitivity. It means that if the consumer thinks that the first combination is at least as good as the second combination of goods, and the second combination is at least as good as the third combination, then the first combination is at least as good as the third one. It means that the consumer's preference is consistent or transitive. Let me make it very simple. In short, it simply means that if A is preferred to B and B is preferred to C, then A is preferred to C. Okay, so it means he is consistent if he and there is his behavior is uniform. Then we have the axiom of non-satiety. Non-satiety means that never comes a point when the consumer feels that he is saturated or he is full. It means simply that the more he gets of the commodities, the more he wants. And last, we have axiom of monotonic preference. This simply means that suppose the consumer has two combination of commodities. In one combination, say at least one commodity is more than the other combination, he definitely prefers the combination of goods where even 1 unit of one commodity is more, right? So these are certain characteristics associated with indifference curve. Now this indifference curve is based on certain assumptions. Like in economics, we have a lot of assumptions associated with the different theories. In this indifference curve, some of the specific assumptions are, here we are talking about two commodities. Then we are talking about non-satiety, which I've already said earlier on. Non-satiety means that he wants more of the commodities. Then point number 3 is that it has indifference curve assumes ordinal utility, which means that the various combinations of goods can be ranked in order of preference. Then the fourth assumption is that the diminishing marginal law of substitution is applicable. Now, this diminishing marginal law of substitution is an important concept. We will do some more slides on this. Let me just give you a simple idea about what it means. Marginal rate of substitution simply means the rate at which the consumer is ready to sacrifice one commodity, say in our case bananas, in order to consume extra unit of another commodity. In our example, say it is apples, so that the utility level, or let's say the satisfaction level, remains unchanged. But as the consumer goes on having more and more of apples, he is he is prepared to forego or sacrifice less and less of bananas. This is known as basically the concept of diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Like, we've got 2 more slides regarding this because it's an important concept. With the help of an example, we'll understand this even more clearly, right? And like any other theory, here also we assume that the consumer is rational. He means that, which simply means that with his given income, he wants to maximize his satisfaction. Okay? Now, what are the properties which are associated with indifference curve? Let us see. One of the property is that indifference curves are convex to the origin. Now, an indifference curve is convex to the origin because of diminishing marginal rate of substitution. What happens is that when the consumer consumes, in our example, more and more of apples, his marginal utility from apples keeps on declining, and he is willing to give up less and less of bananas, as is given in our example, for each apple. So, indifference curves are convex to the origin. Okay? So, it gives this downward sloping convex shape to the indifference curve. The second property is that it slopes downwards. Now, an indifference curve slopes downwards because it's logical, because as a consumer consumes more and more of one good, he must consume less and less of the other good if he is to remain on the same indifference curve, and if he is to remain on the same satisfaction level. Higher indifference curve represents higher level of satisfaction. That is obviously so, because higher indifference curve means higher combination of 2 goods. Obviously, it will give him more satisfaction than any combination of goods at a lower indifference curve. And indifference curves can never intersect each other. Now, each indifference curve represents different combinations of the 2 goods, right? And these different combinations of 2 goods on different indifference curves gives different level of satisfaction. So, if they intersect, it means that at that particular point of intersection, a higher combination of 2 goods give same satisfaction as lower combination of 2 goods, which is not practical, which is not rational, and hence we say that indifference curve can never intersect each other. Okay? Now, there are 2 concepts. Let us see what these concepts are. One is the concept of indifference map. Now, indifference map simply means that when we put number of indifference curves into the same graphical space, what we get is a indifference map, and it is shown in the diagram before you. It's quite simple concept. And this marginal rate of substitution concept is quite important, like I had told you just now. And let's see and try to understand it more in details. It refers to the rate at which the commodities can be substituted with each other so that the total satisfaction of the consumer remains the same, right? That we have already said. And there's an equation for that. In this, just check the equation here. It is MRS AB is equal to units of B willing to sacrifice by units of A willing to gain. Now, this whole definition, it sounds complicated. It's very simple actually. Let us just look into the example and then we will understand clearly what it is. See, so MRS between A and B is given here. You have different combination PQRST, then you have got apples and you have got bananas A and B. And the last column is important, the marginal rate of substitution of bananas by apples. Okay. So what we find here is that in the different combinations, remember the satisfaction is the same. and he is going on like getting 1 unit extra of apple in each successive combination, and in the process he's sacrificing certain units of bananas to remain on the same level of satisfaction. But what do you see in the last column? See, first he is sacrificing 5 bananas for 1 apple, then 4, then 3, then 2. So what is happening is that successively the amount of bananas that he is willing to give up to get 1 additional unit of apple is going on decreasing. And if you remember the 2 properties of indifference curve, we had said one is that it is convex to the origin, the other we had said it's downward sloping. Both of these characteristics come about because of this special quality, not quality, rather, what will I say? This speciality of diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Okay, so far we are looking into the consumer's behavioral pattern. Now remember, he can have the quantities, he can have various combinations of the 2 quantities only if he pays for them. So he needs income. And when we talk of income, that is yet another aspect of consumer behavior. So let us look into this behavior with the help of certain concept, that is the concept of budget line. Now the budget line, if we go by the definition, it is a graphical representation of all various possible combination of 2 goods that can be purchased with given income and prices, such that the cost of each combination is equal to the money income of the consumer. Now let's make it very simple. It simply means that the consumer has a fixed amount of income which is given. This amount of income he spends entirely on buying different combinations of these 2 goods, and if these various, let me just go to these various points of combination of the 2 goods gives us what is known as the schedule of the budget line. So just look at this. You have combination, let us understand budget line, let us simplify this schedule and see what it is. You have combination EFGST, which contains specific amount of apples and bananas. The only new information you have here is that the apples prices are given, bananas prices are given, and the amount of income of the consumer is given, that is shown in the last column. And it is assumed that whatever income he has, it is all spent on buying these different combinations of apples and bananas given their prices, right? So what do we have here? E, F, G, H, I, J. These different combinations having different quantities of apples and bananas, and these different quantities of apples and bananas are spent by spending the entire income on them. And when we plot these points and join them, what we get is the budget line. So remember, his 20 rupees is his given income, prices of apple is given, prices of bananas is given, entire income is spent on purchasing various combination of these 2 goods. These various combination give us certain points on the graph. We join these points, what we get is the budget line. So that is the budget line. I have explained to you. Against this, look into the definition, you will understand. There is another concept of budget set. Budget set is a set of all possible combination of 2 goods which the consumer can afford given his income and prices in the market. Budget set means these are quantities of the 2 commodities that he can purchase. He may not exhaust his entire income on purchasing these commodities. Let's get it more simplified. I will just give you one simple example. Look at point D in this diagram before you. If you see, the point D is below the budget line. it's a certain combination of apples and bananas. He purchased it, but he does not spend his entire income on purchasing the goods, because if he had spent his entire income, he would have been on the budget line, right? So there might be various other points within this points which are given to us by below the budget line. So all of these are examples of budget set, means various combinations of the two goods that the consumer can buy, but not necessarily by spending his entire income on it, right? So these are budget sets. Budget line means the combination of goods that he can buy if he exhausts his entire income buying those combinations. Now there is another case. Look at this point C. Point C is way out of the budget line. It means it's beyond his capacity. So it is an unattainable combination. So as far as the consumer is concerned, he can buy any combination only given within the budget line. And as far as indifference curve analysis is concerned, we assume that he buys various combinations of goods by exhausting his income. Can this budget line change? The answer is yes. Now let us see how it can change. Okay, let me just, before going into that, let me just tell you this. I'm going fast because of the time. I hope I can finish it. Properties of budget line: it is downward sloping. It has a negative slope, which means that it slopes downward as more of one good can be bought only by decreasing some units of the other good. Because remember, there is a question of limited income and prices of the commodities are given. So if he buys more of one commodity, definitely he has to buy less of the other commodity, and hence it gives a downward slope to the budget line. Also, budget line is a straight line because the slope of the budget line is represented by the price ratio, and price ratio is constant. It's given, okay, so throughout, and so the budget line is a straight line. Now, can there be a change in the budget line? Yes. Let us see what the type of changes might be. Now, what happens when the income of the consumer changes? If the income of the consumer increases, he can buy more of the two commodities. So we get a new budget line, B1, A1. And similarly, if the income of the consumer decreases, he can buy less of the two commodities. So you get a new budget line given to us by B2, A2. Now, what happens if there is a change in the price of the commodities? Suppose there is a change in the price of apples. So what happens in this case is that if the price of apples fall, he can buy more of it. In such case, the budget line will shift from BA to BA1. Okay, it goes outward. And if the price of apples fall, that is when the price of apples fall. And if the price of apples increase, he can buy less of apples. Okay, dam badhar loge loge kom he kinibo paribo. So, earlier on, if the budget line was BA, now it becomes BA2. What happens if there is a change in the price of bananas? Same situation. If the price of banana falls, he can buy more. So the budget line will shift from BA to B1, A1. And if the price of bananas increases, so the budget line will shift downwards to B to A. Okay. So today what we have learned is the ordinal utility approach to consumer equilibrium. Before going to consumer equilibrium directly, we are trying to familiarize ourselves with certain concepts. Concept of indifference curve, concept of budget line, right? So we have come to the end of this class. Revise and get back to me for queries. Okay, thank you.